Good morning, everyone. Honorable Roosevelt Skerrit, Prime Minister, members of Cabinet, the Financial Secretary, the Cabinet Secretary or the Permanent Secretaries, Ambassador to CARICOM, members of the media, those of you tuned in, good morning. The Prime Minister has committed to these regular updates to the nation, and he is here again this morning to address you and to take questions from the media. Please welcome the Prime Minister of Dominica, Honorable Roosevelt Skerrit, with opening remarks.
Thank you very much. Let me recognize my cabinet colleagues there, the senior public officers, very importantly the media. There's no press conference, so we always appreciate you making the time to be here. His infectious smile, laugh and engaging presence endeared him to us all. On behalf of the government and people of Dominica, I extend deepest sympathies to his family, friends, former colleagues at DBS Radio, and the wider media fraternity. May his soul rest in eternal peace, and may we always celebrate the life of a man who gave so much of himself to broadcasting and to the people of Dominica. It is with deep sadness that I learn of the passing of my constituent, Tony Seaman of Pennville. I extend heartfelt condolences to his family, loved ones, and to the entire community of Pennville as we come to terms with this loss. Tony was a valued member of our community, and my prayers are with his family today. May Tony's soul rest in eternal peace, and may his family find comfort in this difficult time. I want to also place on record again my condemnation in the strongest possible terms of all acts of violence which bring pain and fear to our communities. Violence has no place in our society, and I call on every citizen to join in building a culture of peace and tolerance. As a government, we remain committed to ensuring the safety and security of every Dominican. In recent months, we have taken steps to strengthen law enforcement's ability to curb violent crime, including measures to address the illegal use of firearms and improve the resources available to the police force. These are important steps, but we recognize that more can always be done and more must always be done. We will therefore continue to support the police with the training, tools, and technology needed to detect and prevent crime and to bring offenders to justice. The protection of our people and the preservation of peace in our communities will remain a top priority for this government. I want to reiterate that while government will continue to take a zero-tolerance approach to violent crime, this is not solely a Skerrit matter or a government matter. It is the responsibility of every Dominican to play their part in protecting our communities. Parents, churches, schools, civil society, and the community leaders and the business leaders all have an important role to play in shaping values, guiding our young people, and rejecting the culture of violence. I continue to engage law enforcement in our efforts to tackle this issue. Crime and violence is a societal issue, and therefore it requires the whole of the society to play its part in resolving this challenge. But rest assured that this government will do everything within its power to ensure that we do not have an escalation of the situation in our country, and that we rid our streets and our homes with illegal firearms in Dominica. Of course, the police will speak more about this in the days ahead. On Wednesday, October 1, Dominica proudly joins Barbados, St. Vincent and the Grenadines, and Belize in taking a decisive step forward on a matter that has been on the regional agenda for decades. That is the full free movement of CARICOM nationals. It means that participating states will grant their nationals the right to move freely, reside, work, and remain indefinitely in the 4 member states without the need for a residency permit or a work permit. They will have the right to access public primary and secondary education, as well as emergency healthcare and primary healthcare services. The required legislative, security, and administrative measures to support this free movement will be implemented in the participating member states. Free movement allows us to fill gaps in critical areas, while giving our own citizens greater access to opportunities across the region. It is a win-win for all. I know there may be concerns about security or about the impact on jobs. Let me assure you, our systems of cooperation, vetting, and regional security will remain strong. We're not lowering our guard. What we are doing is removing unnecessary barriers that have, for too long, held back our collective progress. I am hopeful that our CARICOM member states, that other CARICOM member states will soon join us in this historic step so that we can realize the full promise of a true Caribbean community. To the people of Dominica, I say, embrace this change with an open mind. Learn as much as you can about what free movement means and the opportunities it can bring for you and your families. And this notion that which prevails, that you will see a dramatic move of people from one country to the other, has never happened. In the various categories that we were approved thus far, there is no evidence to show that there is a dramatic move from one island to the other. And we cannot speak about integration. We cannot speak about solidarity. We cannot speak about coming together if people cannot move freely. And I think that I'm hoping that the rest of us within the Caribbean community can join on to the 4 of us who have taken this step to move forward with this, and that we have a full free movement of CARICOM nationals within our space. I wish to inform the nation that the OECS member states with CBI programs this month signed the agreement establishing the Eastern Caribbean Citizenship by Investment Regulatory Authority, an initiative designed to safeguard the integrity, transparency, and sustainability of our citizenship by investment programs. The establishment of the regulatory authority will ensure that our programs remain credible, secure, and globally respected. The authority will function as an independent regulatory body which will develop and enforce uniform standards and procedures governing the operation of all programs across participating states. It will oversee the activities of agents, developers, promoters, and due diligence service providers, ensuring compliance with both regional regulations and international best practices. It will conduct independent audits, carry out ongoing monitoring, and issue clear guidelines, directives, and recommendations to maintain consistency and fairness. One of the authority's most important functions will be to set minimum due diligence standards and ensure their rigorous application. The agreement also provides for the creation of a centralized regional database to be managed by impacts. This database will consolidate all relevant data on applicants and their dependents across participating states. Its purpose is to strengthen regional and international security, enhance intelligence sharing, and ensure that our systems remain in full compliance with the standards and recommendations of the Financial Action Task Force and the OECD and other international bodies. The agreement, I believe, will be made available in full for our citizens to read, but it is my view that it is comprehensive in its scope and reflects the collective resolve of our governments to continue to maintain high standards. For Dominica, this step is entirely consistent with our long-standing commitment to uphold the highest standards of integrity in the management of our program. We are proud of the contribution that the CBI has made to our country's development. But we have always maintained that the success of the program depends on its credibility and its alignment with global best practices. We therefore welcome this regional approach. It is an important safeguard for the conduct of our programs and an indication of our willingness to act responsibly as sovereign states. Dominica is pleased with this agreement, and we will fully support the work of the new authority. We will continue to administer our CBI programs with diligence, transparency, and fairness to meet and exceed the international standards and to ensure that it continues to deliver benefits to our people. I believe with this new agreement in place, our citizens in the region, investors, and our global partners can be confident that the citizenship by investment programs of our OECS states are well regulated and sustainable. I want to place on record our Dominica's particular appreciation to the United States of America, both the State Department and the Treasury Department, and of course the Embassy in Bridgetown, for their extraordinary partnership and feedback and engagement in the finalization of this agreement, and also place on record our appreciation to the United Kingdom government for its feedback during the consultative process. As I end, I mentioned last month that the government had concluded salary negotiations with the Dominica Public Service Union and the Dominica Association of Teachers and the Police Welfare Association for the period 2021 to 2024 and 2024 to 2027. The agreed upon salary measures have come into effect starting this September. Public officers in Dominica will receive an 8% salary increase, 3% in 2024-2025, 2% in 2025-2026, and 3% in 2026-2027 over the 2024-2027 period. Effective this month, teachers will receive salary increases on the same schedules, along with new allowances to support their work. Government has committed to the payment of a new resource allowance, and they will also receive their back pay. And the resource allowance, teachers have to buy sometimes manila paper, they may buy some markers, they might have to buy some glue, and so every teacher will be given an allowance to allow them to be in a position to purchase those items. And so we look forward to this working out. During the months of October and November, both teachers, well, they're all public officers, but because they're represented by two different unions, they're differentiated. But we could say public officers will receive in excess of $4 million in back pay in the months of October and November. So this is good news for public officers. I am not sure whether parliamentarians are part of that as public officers, but I don't think we are. But I'm very happy for the We are part of that too? Serious? That's good news for me, man. But I'm very happy for that, and I want to really express my appreciation to the unions and to the Police Welfare Association for the professional and respectful manner in which they negotiate with the government. As I said last press conference, I think they outdid the government negotiating team this year, and it's all good, and everybody's happy, and we look forward to their continued diligence and productivity. And of course, with regards to the police, effective July 2025, the Police Welfare Association has also agreed to an 8% salary increase. So also the police are enjoying the 8% salary increase. And of course, the police will have been paid their back pay in May of this year. So they received their back pay in May of this year. And so our public officers or teachers or police officers, are really the backbone of national development. And we are happy to have reached this agreement with both parties. And I think sometimes the rest of the country has to appreciate the role that public officers play and police officers play in national development. Now, because the government is the taxman and the government is the employee of these public officers, their taxes are deducted from their salaries. So there's no escaping. Some employers might deduct from your salary the income tax and may not pay to the treasury, to the income tax, to the inland revenue. But with the government, it stays in the same hand, and so the income tax base is really sustained by the public and police officers. And this is why we must always find ways of improving their condition of work and ensuring that they can be in better positions. This is why we have the 2% government housing loan facility for the police and public officers. This is why we have reduced the price of land so that we can facilitate the purchase, and to make it easier for them to first buy land and secondly to be able to build a house and feel part of the efforts of national development. So I want to thank the leadership of the Dominican Public Service Union, the DAT, and of course the Police Welfare Association for the constructive engagement through this process. And I salute all public officers and so on. And don't mind Thomas Little when you see him. Thomas is a nice guy, generally he's a nice guy. Though he has to represent his constituents, but as a human being, he's a very decent and nice guy, and always a pleasure working with him, and of course the Police Welfare Association and the DAT. So I will end here and allow for your questions. Thank you very much.
All right, thank you, Minister. We heard the Prime Minister. Curtis is already on his feet. Give me a minute, Curtis. We heard the Prime Minister speak about free movement, which comes into effect October 1, as well as the agreement signed by OECS member states in reference to CBI. Curtis is ready. I see MO News is here in person, so it's about to be interesting. Curtis, go ahead.
Good morning to you, Zura Smith, and good morning everyone here at this room. My first question, Prime Minister, is minimum wage. The government of Dominica announced a few months ago that a new minimum wage would come into effect on the 1st of October 2025. Can you now tell us what classes of workers will enjoy that minimum wage, or in fact, whether you are implementing this new minimum wage come October 1, 2025. My second question in this round, of course, I'll make way for Khaled John Marcus in a while. My second question is on Vescott Jones, Prime Minister. Vescott Jones, a security officer at Douglas Chance Airport, lost his job a few years ago as a result of his action or non-action as it relates to crab acts. Somebody was leaving the airport or due to leave the airport with crab acts. Vescott Jones lost his job as a result. In fact, Lennox Linton was the one due to leave the airport with crab acts. He lost his job as a result, and I know you have intervened in the matter. That matter has been with tribunal for a number of years. Can you tell us now, Prime Minister, whether in fact the government has taken any decision recently on Vesco Jones. And I will just ask a favor before Canada comes in, very eager to come in, Canada John Baptiste. The other question has to do with the free movement of CARICOM nationals from 4 countries. You announced it again this morning. You did say that the Parliament of Dominica would meet to discuss the free movement. Is that a requirement? Is that going to happen, or we're going to go into the free movement without the Parliament meeting? You can now turn to Carlisle and
Thank you. With regards to the minimum wage, we made the announcement in the budget of this year that we will have the minimum wage reviewed with the intention of having this implemented in the 1st of October. We have, in fact, received, as you know, subsequent to the statement in the Parliament by the Minister of Finance, the advisory board, as required by law, was appointed. They had a very short window to work with, and all fairness to them, they came up with some recommendations. They did quite a bit of work in the short period of time that they had to function, and so the quality of their work was very good. We have reviewed it in its draft form at the cabinet level, and we appointed a cabinet subcommittee which includes senior public officers to have a further look at it. But I believe that the initial reaction of the cabinet was that the committee, the advisory board, will need to look at the rates over again. I think what the committee had done is that they looked at the entire region, what everyone is offering, obviously taking into consideration the domestic situation in Dominica, and to juxtapose it against all of those. And so what they did, they came up with a regional average and placed Dominica somewhere before the regional average. But there is the general consensus that we believe that it could be moved a bit higher, and so it will be sent back to the advisory board for further review, to take into consideration the views expressed by the cabinet. So that will be looked at, and so you may have a delay in its implementation because of the additional work. Okay, but if there's a delay, it will not be a dramatic delay, because one of the requests coming from the Employers Federation was for a time lapse, and as a matter of fact, they were suggesting that it should come into effect on the 1st of July next year, to allow for the transition. But I don't believe that they need all that time for the transition, because obviously there are many employers in the country who are already paying people beyond what the law stipulates as the minimum. So there are people who do not have to make any transition. They're already doing so. It might not be as significant as it is. But I believe everyone in the country, every employer in the country would want to agree that the minimum wage increase is a bit delayed, and we gave reasons why it was delayed. And so while we will take into consideration the specific requests of the Employers Federation, but I do not believe that the dramatic extension will be justified in this circumstance, because every other groups of employees in the country have enjoyed an increase because they are represented by a union. The only people who have not gotten a legal increase, a mandatory increase, are those captured in the minimum wage categories. And had it not been for that legislation, and if they were unionized, I'm sure they would have enjoyed an increase in salaries, because everybody has received an increase in their salaries. And so I believe it is only fair that we ensure that, one, they get an increase, and two, it is fair to them, but not dramatically onerous on the employer, because we also have to take into consideration the impact of the increase on the employer. Because what you do not want to have happen is that you give a dramatic increase and then the employer cannot sustain it. And the person who you're trying to give an increase might end up losing his job altogether, or might end up losing full-time employment and now be temporary, 2 days a week, 3 days a week. So there has to be a sensible and sensitive balance that they both can coexist and they both can feel that justice has been served on both sides. And so that has to be taken into consideration. And this is why I believe that it might be fair to the Employers Federation to take note of their requests. Only thing I would say at this point in respect to their request is that I do not believe that they need all these months for a transition. But certainly they may need some time for a transition. Though people are aware since July, an announcement was made that there's going to be a change in the minimum wage. And I'm sure that they will have already factored that into the equation. But we take note of their requests, and as part of the consultative process, as part of living together, and being respectful of each other's point of view, then that point will be taken into consideration. The free movement, I believe that there may be some legislative amendments in some cases, but it can go into effect by a policy decision. The law can be retroactive to cover the law will be retroactive to cover the period of time that the law would not have been amended, simply to add categories to the legislation, and of course to ensure that the issues of contingent rights are enshrined in law and not in by way of a policy. But the policy decision of the government can allow the free movement to proceed and to be effected on the 1st of October. But we will go to Parliament in the middle of October to have all of the necessary amendments made to the law to give it the full legal effect. But it can be, I am satisfied that by a cabinet decision, it can come into effect, and that period that will be covered retroactively by the Parliament. With regards to Westcott Jones, as you know, I've tried many times to resolve this matter, and take into consideration that this is a young man. I know he had some family challenges. His parents were not well, and in my view, sometimes mistakes are made. Poor judgment comes into effect sometimes, and in my view, if you're dealing with a leader of the opposition at the time, sometimes an officer may not know how to treat with a person in that position, whether it's a minister or a senior public officer. So people freeze in certain circumstances, and they set aside, maybe sometimes not deliberately, but because of the circumstance, they set aside the rules or their understanding and so forth. So I have tried many times. I met Westcott Jones no less than 4 times or 3 times during the years, and trying to resolve the matter so we can move forward, obviously recognizing that it is before the tribunal. But I try to use my good offices as Prime Minister to resolve issues between citizens and state agencies or the government and so forth, because at the same I represent both, and I cannot cause injury to each other, so I have to be very careful. And of course my intervention is always about using my good offices to resolve the matter. But the previous instances did not work, and we met with Westcott Jones last week, and I believe that there is an understanding of going forward to resolving the matter. So very soon I will write to DASPA to advise them of the action that they should take in respect to Westcott Jones. One of his being that he should be reinstated and be given the salary that he would have, a percentage of the salary that he would have lost during that period of time. And let us move on. My mission is to set aside contentious issues as much as I can and resolve things outside of a contentious environment as much as I can, so that we can all live together in the way that the Lord directed us to. So maybe by tomorrow I will write to the diaspora to advise them on the action they should take in respect of Vesco Jones. But this also brings in a bigger question which I believe the government needs to address. That is the issue of the function and the functionality and the efficiency of the tribunals. Tribunals take way too long to hear cases. And when you're dealing with people's future and people's livelihoods and so on, I believe that greater alacrity should be extended and exercised in respect to the deliberations of the tribunal. Obviously, the tribunal is made up of largely voluntary people who come from time to time. And there are times that both sides may delay. Those who take the matter to the tribunal may delay, and those who are responding may delay. So you're understanding. But I believe that we may need to look at having a permanent engagement for a period of time so that matters can be heard. Or when you have a tribunal, engage those persons during the period of the tribunal on a full-time basis, so they can come throughout the day rather than the evening or afternoon or after the day's work or after they've done something else. So I think we need to find a way of causing those tribunals to be more efficient and effective, because I remember the situation with the ports, how long it was, 20 years. That should not be the case. I don't think that that's what the drafters of the law envisaged, that a tribunal would take so long to hear a matter one way or the other. And if people are aggrieved by the decision of the tribunal, then they have the next step to go to the courts. But they can't go to the court unless they hear a matter at the tribunal level, and so forth. So I think we need to. I think these things bring up issues that we need to pay attention to, and to see how we can move it forward. I think I've answered your 3 questions. Right, thank you. Sorry for being long. I think this question needs a little explanation, so I try to be brief sometimes, but yeah, please, Scarlett.
Prime Minister, my questions are: do you believe there is division within CARICOM as it relates to the U.S. presence near Venezuela under the pretext of fighting drugs, and also given the fact that the U.S. has not responded to the letter sent by the CARICOM foreign ministers to Rubinho when the U.S. started building up its military might near Venezuela? Question 1. Question 2, do you agree with the Trinidad and Tobago's Prime Minister that the Caribbean is a zone of peace, which may be nothing else but a farce? And what is your position or that of your government on that issue? And my 3rd question is, during the negotiations between the police and the government team, it was proposed that special constables will be brought into the police force as full-time police officers. Would you possibly have an update on this development?
Yeah. The first question about the division within CARICOM on the U.S. presence and so on is not for me to determine that. Every country expresses themselves as sovereign nations. People have divergent views on a particular matter. This is not unusual. You'll have that. And so I would not want to and a delayed response by Secretary of State, and there's no issue there. Sometimes people write to us, we never even acknowledge the letter for how much to respond. So, I would caution us against trying to create a situation within CARICOM that really doesn't necessarily exist. In respect to the community of the Caribbean and Latin American states, and of course within CARICOM, we've declared the Caribbean Sea as a zone of peace, and the notion of declaring the arguments of or the rationale for declaring the zone of peace is to ensure that our waters are never used for any military incursions or military interventions. That whatever issues that we have between ourselves or among ourselves, that we can come together in a room and discuss it and to find a diplomatic, friendly, non-contentious way of resolving it. So that's what the rationale for this zone of peace is. And the truth is, since the Second World War, we have not had, and of course you had a situation in Grenada, but generally one can say that the Caribbean has been the most peaceful region in the entire world. I mean, the other places in the world are on fire, literally. But we have enjoyed peace and tranquility. And so this is the background or the rationale for this. But I have been around for a long time. You with my song and somebody, it's okay, somebody else. But I've been around for a long time. But I've never been in the business of sparring with any prime minister or head of state or the government. And if everybody's view is their view, they represent their country's interests, and they're free to express themselves in a manner in which they believe is in their national interests to do so. And so I don't take umbrage to people expressing themselves or trying to say, well, I disagree or I agree or whatever it is. Everybody has a different view on different matters. Rightly or wrongly, that's not for me to make a judgment on. I can only speak for Dominica and Dominica's position on any global or regional matter. And that's what I try to do. But you'll never see any record of me, even when people may say things about Dominica that I may call them privately. You understand? And speak to them privately and to say, what is it you say about Dominica? But I will not go on to respond publicly and to shout across the Caribbean Sea. And the reality is, every single CARICOM country is extremely vulnerable to all kinds of shocks, all kinds of natural disasters. We're not islands unto ourselves. We're not continents. We don't have this largest that any one of us think that we have. And as we have seen in experiences, in a twinkle of an eye, all what you have built for all of these centuries can be washed and blown away by a natural disaster. And so we all have to lead our countries with humility and recognizing that we're just passing through. And that's what I do here. That's the hope. But we have to be careful that we don't try to sow seeds of discord and disunity and contention among ourselves and between ourselves. It's not good for anybody in that manner. Negotiations with the Police Welfare Association in regards to special constables. I believe that the understanding was that those who meet the requirements, because they're minimum requirements for you to join the police force. Because as you know, when police constables, the idea of police constable came about, it was never to be engaged in a full-time basis. We have been, and you have your uniform in your closet, and when you have an activity, you come outside the courthouse and you stand up there and and so forth. But because of the exigencies of the situation, we have engaged them, and in many different areas. And all fairness to many of them, you will never know the difference between them and an appointed police officer because of the diligence and the understanding of the work that they have to do and so forth. But there are men and women among them who, with some additional training, we believe, can get to that level. And so it is left to the police administration to look at this and to advise what kind of training you're going to put in place that may be shorter than the normal training, and that could transition them into the police force. And so we support that fully. And it's left to the police now to seek to implement that understanding between the government and the Police Welfare Association. Yeah.
Earlier this year, you spoke about cabinet reshuffle. When do you think it will become a reality? Because we've passed a couple of months now, we've not seen it happen.
Second question, you spoke also last year, somewhere in August, about the reality of the TLR4 track in Portsmouth. And my third question, I'm not reading from the script, is what is going on with the titles of homes? You're making another big pronouncement this afternoon, and I congratulate you too for Scots and people. And we've been hearing about titles and titles that it's not become a reality. Just speak to that. Thank you.
Matt, I don't know why you have to specifically say you have no script before you. I'm not sure. I mean, in regards to the cavalry shop, there is no time constraint on this. The Constitution, there's nothing in the Constitution that says that you must do this at this particular time on this particular date and so forth. I mean, it will happen when the Prime Minister decides. It will happen. And life continues. Work continues. There are issues that we're seeking to address within the government that we continue to address. And when it comes for reassigning ministerial portfolios, it is expected that ministers will continue to carry the duties, but there's also collective responsibility that we'll continue to carry out. So it will happen when the Prime Minister decides, and will advise the President, and then we'll move forward. So I don't think people should make a huge issue out of this. It will happen at the appropriate time. Okay. The TLR for track. As you know, we have a commitment for some funding from the International Athletics Association, and of course, the government has moved with the acquisition of land in the point round. There are some studies have been done. I know the Ministry of Sports had discussions on Friday, Thursday last week, I believe, looking at, because what we're seeking to do is to have a master plan developed for that area. And part of the master plan will be to include an Olympic-sized swimming pool as well. And so do it properly. And so we're engaging a architectural/engineering firm who will give us that comprehensive master plan. So that obviously the first phase will be the setting down of the track and the associated amenities for the track and field. And simultaneously with that, we will also build the Olympic-sized swimming pool, and to turn that area into a real sports center enough, and look at other sports that we can position there. Even the issue of accommodation for athletes who may come from regional tournaments and be able to reside there during the tournament. So there are a number of things that we're looking at in this, and so I'm hoping that very soon we can share with the public the master plan for this area and advise you on how we're going ahead of it. So I have directed the Ministry of Sports to step back a bit and to do it better than how they were proposing to do it in terms of the planning, and let's come up with a master plan so that we avoid any problems and issues. So rather than us looking at a narrow part of the development, let's look at master plan. We will not have all of the money to do everything at one time, but as you know, what you need to do there and what you will have to do there and the associated costs, so that you can program yourself much better and people can journey with you in that particular exercise. Titles by for the homes given, there is an undisputed position of the government that the people will receive their titles, and there is no government that can change that. Okay, it's a commitment to the people, and all of us understand the complexity sometimes in getting a title. It is not just saying, look, a title. The title has to be defined with boundaries, and also every lot must be properly surveyed, because you need to have precise boundaries. You need to know who is your neighbor, you know who you're boundary with, etc., etc., etc. And then you also have the further complication of strata titles, where you have apartments, and then you have to go and give everybody a title and the conditions of those titles, etc., etc. And so we had had attempts at the Attorney General's office where state attorneys were providing support in that regard. But recognizing the limited resources that the Attorney General has in terms of human resources, sometimes matters come up that they have to redirect those human resources to emergencies before the state. So what the cabinet has done in its deliberate judgment and determination is to engage a state attorney exclusively to the Ministry of Housing for that particular purpose. That is to facilitate the titles for persons who would have gotten government properties. And significant work has been done by this young attorney. I want to commend her. And I want to, actually, when she came to see me, she's the one who suggested that, look, Prime Minister, I worked in the evaluation unit before I went to study law, and I don't mind helping in this area. And I said, well, great. And then this is how we end up putting her there. And so she is intrinsically motivated by this and committed and has a particular passion for this. And when you have passion, 80% of your work is done already, you know. And so far, we have 26 titles for the PD7 people who are residing in Belleville-Chopin. So very soon, 26 families will receive their titles. What I've asked the Attorney General to do, because as you know, there are fees associated with this and so on, I've asked the Attorney General to look at the legislation and to see whether we could make either an amendment to the legislation, right, title by registration legislation, or what I preferred, a separate piece of legislation to treat with people who are receiving those properties, because some people would have received them based on humanitarian grounds, on the social circumstance. People would have received them because they had to be relocated. People would have received them because they had to be compensated, etc., etc., etc. And so we need to look at a piece of legislation that deals with this particular circumstance, separate from the title or registration and so on, to sort of remove the additional processes that are required by law there and so forth. So we're trying to see how we can truncate the situation, but also respecting people's right to property, etc., all of his issues. And so that's been looked at, but that notwithstanding, we continue to move ahead under the existing legislation. And so 26 titles are almost ready, and very soon will be handed over. So this is great news. So we're making movement on this. But you know, Matt, we came from a situation, that's on a side note, where people say, one, Skerrit shouldn't give people homes. Then Skerrit gives somebody a home. Well, they say, look, Skerrit will never give you a home. You can wait and you'll not get a home. That's what they should say to people of PD7. Where Skerrit going to get all the money to build all those homes for PD7? That's a joke. All you never get a home. Best go back to PD7. When they got the homes, they tell them, well, you have a home and you have no title. You understand what I'm saying? So, I want to hear what they will say when they get the titles. I think they'll come up with something. But we're committed to that, and there's a promise made. And you will see the record, Matt. You know me for a long time. You, Rose, and myself, we used to travel together. So you know me for a long time. And Carla too. So when we make a promise, we do keep it. It might take a little longer, but we do keep our promise. And that is why the Dominican people know about me. I want to make a promise, I keep it. And it may come a little later than people expected, but I do ensure that. That's why I don't make promises I can't keep. Yes, Imo News.
Good morning, everyone. Can you clarify whether teachers at the private schools will get the allowances as well? And whether principals of these schools will also benefit from the mileage allowance? That's question number one. And number two, as we continue to build schools to meet the needs of a modern society, are there specific plans to ensure that these new institutions, well, we just saw the grammar school, will be equipped with air conditioning to provide students with a more comfortable and conducive learning environment?
Regards to, well, with regards to private schools, the law does not give the government jurisdiction or the Ministry of Education jurisdiction over private schools. So you have private schools in the law, you have government-owned schools, and you have government-assisted schools. And even in respect to government-assisted schools, we don't have jurisdiction in terms of the terms of condition. What the government does with government-assisted schools is that we assist with the payment of salaries to the teachers, so convent, SMA, SMP, St. Martin, both primary and secondary, SDA, secondary. So there are a number of schools across the country that are government-assisted schools where the government has an understanding and relationship with them. And so when the government negotiates, so they're not employees of the government, private schools. Neither are the government-assisted schools employees of the government. Within the government-assisted schools, there are, in fact, public officers there. They're teachers that we have seconded to those schools to support those schools and so on. So they are paid, they're employees of the Public Service Commission, obviously seconded to the churches in many instances. So we don't have no jurisdiction over what are the terms and conditions of the private schools. So I cannot speak to that. What we have done in the past, even if the government-assisted schools are not entitled legally or otherwise with the salary increases that are negotiated for teachers, because they're government-assisted schools and we extend that increase to them from time to time. So I would have given authorization for the last negotiation in salary increase to extend that to the government-assisted schools, okay? But the private school would need to have more clinical assessment and evaluation of it because they're completely outside of the jurisdiction of the Ministry of Education, except for the quality of the tuition, et cetera, et cetera. There's no oversight control in terms of the terms of condition. Even with the government, even with the government-assisted schools, it is a special consideration we give. It's not an entitlement in law, because what we do is that we give the church, in many instances, because the churches are the ones who own the government-assisted schools, we give the church a contribution, and they now spread the contribution as they deem necessary and appropriate. And so, but we recognize that we're all part of the education system, and I don't want convent teachers, some of them who are not government employees, to be, a little grudgeful that the colleague sitting next to them getting a salary because they're public officer and so on. So we extend it so everybody can be happy, and everybody can teach the children with a smile, and we find intrinsic motivation and so on. So we do that. But if there are some private schools who have special issues, I think they may want to have a conversation with the Ministry of Education to understand. But we have, in fact, supported private schools. So you have Orion, for example, which is a completely private school. But I placed them in a government building. So they had Baffert State in a government building. I don't think they paid rent. And I don't think they paid water either. So we have them there. You understand? So that's what it is. And with respect to the AC, I'm not sure whether what we have done, you see at PSS, we've supported with the fans. I think the power for the Vickers constituency would have facilitated that. And also the AC in the staff room. You guys haven't sent me a letter of thanks yet, just appreciation, a card, something. Tell Skerrit, thank you for the AC in the staff room and so on. But and then we also have done that at the grammar school, in the classrooms. But AC, the problem with AC is that some students may not be able to sit in an AC room. So you have different issues. Some people like AC, some people like AC. So what we have tried to do is to at least put the fans up in the classrooms. But where the staff rooms are concerned, I believe that the staff rooms will be outfitted with air conditioning in the staff rooms. But in terms of and of course, in the computer room and maybe the library and those rooms, But in terms of all the classrooms, not everybody would want to have them. When you have AC, then the windows have to be closed properly and not open with natural breeze. So there's some issues that one we raise, and the issue of maintenance, the issue of people's health, and all these things going to be raised and so on. But what we try to do, is try to do all that we can to ensure that the classrooms are comfortable and they are conducive as possible. But on that point, I believe that the government, the Ministry of Education, has to revisit the quality of the furniture that we buy. The furniture, I don't think we should be having children sitting on wood for the entire day. And we can put a little cushion on it or something. And so if you're going to spend all that money on furniture, then let us get better furniture that's more comfortable for the students and so on. So these are things I think we need to look at and we'll continue to look at.
Yeah, Prime Minister, the Electoral Commission asked for more time a few weeks ago to implement the voter registration process. They were asking for more time, they were not ready. And they set a date for October to implement the confirmation process. Would you know whether in fact that is going to happen from October 18th or 17th? I think that's the date that they mentioned for the confirmation, 15th, October 15th. For the confirmation to begin. My other question is on the Roosevelt Enhancement Project. We are aware that monies have been secured for that project. We've heard a lot about it. We've not seen signs of an implementation yet. Can you bring us up to date on the process and where are you as a government in terms of implementing the Roosevelt Enhancement Project?
In respect to the confirmation, obviously, as far as the Parliament is concerned, as far as the Cabinet is concerned, we have provided the Electoral Commission with all of the resources, both legislative and financial, to effect the confirmation exercise. Obviously, the effecting of the confirmation is a matter for the Electoral Commission, so we don't get involved in their day-to-day operations and running. We only deal with them when they require resources from us, or they may the Attorney General to advise them on particular legislation or interpretation of legislation, etc. So as far as the government is concerned, and as far as the Parliament is concerned, the Electoral Commission would have no reason not to be ready by October 15. And I will go further to say that I don't think that the Electoral Commission has the ability or the opportunity to wiggle itself out of that October 15 deadline, because the Parliament would have been very specific with the additional time given to it on its request to commence the confirmation exercise on October 15. Okay, so I think they will make an announcement very soon, and I'm hoping that they'll make an announcement very soon. But I'm not aware of any reason why they shouldn't be ready on October 15. Or at least I have not been informed, but I'm not aware of any. But I think that question will be better posed to them rather than me. Otherwise, I will only be speculating as to what's going on in the Electoral Commission. Okay. In respect to roads enhancement, as you know, there were delays. One with the setting up of the project implementation unit. All of the staff of the project implementation unit would have had to be approved, or rather, there no objection given by the Saudi fund. So there was a prolonged delay in arriving at a conclusion on the staffing. The moment the staffing was approved, the unit hit the road running, because at the time of the coming in, they would have the government would have received bids for the supervision, because there are two levels of the work. You have to have a supervision team in place before you go to tender the project. Okay, and so as I've been advised, there are ongoing negotiations with one of the supervisory firms. Once they conclude on the negotiations, that is to say the unit and that firm, then that recommendation will be sent to the Saudi fund for its no objection, Once that no objection is received, then we will go straight into the tender of the actual works. And I've been advised further that that supervisory contract could be issued maybe in October, before the end of October this year. And so once you receive that, we have all of the documentation prepared already to go to send out the notice for invitation of bids for the actual construction. Now, let me make it clear to those who I see posting things on social media about money. We have not received no money from the Saudi fund. So there's no money in the treasury or anywhere in Dominica, in any government account, funds from the Saudi fund. The funds are still in Saudi Arabia with the Saudi fund. These funds will only be distributed on a phase basis. So once we sign the contract, there will be a schedule of payments. There'll be certificates requesting payments. Once the certificates are notarized and certified and approved, then a drawdown will come. It's no different from how the funds are managed from the European Union or from the World Bank or from the CDB. That is why there's a supervisory firm that will have to sign on and say, yes, pay this $1 million and so on. So this idea of where the money gone, that some idiots out there trying to put out there, because social media has turned all kinds of idiots into all kinds of experts. You understand? And so there's no money received by the government of Dominica thus far in respect to this loan of $40 million. Zero. So the idea of notion of where money gone, let us understand. But let me make it very clear that in respect to Roso, the $40 million is an extraordinary investment because the government recognized the importance of the enhancement of Roso. And remember, when we started doing the Roso enhancement project, people were criticizing the bridge is part of the Roso enhancement. The promenade has become now the premier entertainment spot in the country for tourists and local alike. Just criticized. And the works that we did along the KFC there, and the planters we put in there, and all those things, all of this are part of it. The only reason why we had not implemented the other phases of the Roso enhancement because hurricane came, and then COVID came. But we started using our own CBI funds to implement aspects of the Roso enhancement. So the other phase are the roads. That's why we have taken monies to do some of the critical roads in Roso. The sidewalks, redevelop the sidewalks, cover all the drains, we're trying to put all of the cables and electrical lines underground to build resilience in the city and the aesthetic beauty of the city, and so that someone can use a wheelchair from Astafan down to the Bayfront without having to go up and down. That is what we're seeking to achieve. So those who are talking about Roso enhancement, there's no other government that has spoken about Roso enhancement and have done anything about the city than us. You understand? Than us. And so this is part of it. And so we are even more anxious in the government, and the parliamentary rep for Roso is even more anxious than everybody in the country in respect to the commencement and the completion of the Roso enhancement project. Because as you know, the Parliament for Roso has championed this project even before taking up office as the Parliament for Roso Central. And so we're not talking about we're going to look for money to do it. We have funds to do it, and we are committed to ensuring that is done. But when you borrow money from an institution, there are some procurement rules that you have to follow. That sometimes it is not it is more rigorous than the rules that we follow in terms of our processes, because we're the ones who will approve the unit and the management stuff and so on. But so there are issues that you will always encounter. But the fact is, we have the funds required for this. It's not for us to go through the procurement processes and to have it implemented. I can tell you that I want to see this project because this is crucial, enhance the safety of the city, the aesthetics of the city, the cleanliness of the city. You will not be able to address this tension, Rosa, unless you address the reconstruction of the drains, and that you have now. When you do that, this is where now you're going to put in very strong regulations on the restaurants and bars, and in terms of the grease traps and all of these things that contribute to the stench. And then we're going to be building washrooms in strategic points in the city, public washrooms, so people have no excuse. There'll be public washrooms that will be manned by people during periods of time, so that we all have to play our part. So, insofar as the government's role, we will fulfill our responsibilities towards the enhancement of the city. But in terms of keeping the city clean, it's everyone's responsibility. Everyone's responsibility.
I'm on my second thing, Prime Minister.
Yep.
The Windsor Park Stadium lighting. We have a latest update on that and on that project, and are you satisfied with the pace that work has taken thus far? Because we have Prayer Festival coming up, and it seems that lighting is becoming another nightmare. The Dominica Unit Trust Fund. I've been asking about that Unit Trust Fund for a long time. This is invested in that, and questions have been asked as to when will people finally reap their investment, because we're just not hearing anything about that. And I have the next question is the late payment of the NEP workers. They've been asking that question, why lately they've been receiving, well, I have to say their salaries late, and according to some of them, they also have commitments. And my final one is, can you give us an update on the appointment of a police chief, since the post of police chief has been vacant for a while now, please?
The issue of the lights, obviously, the Ministry of Sports can give you a longer response to this. And so they'll be in a better position than me to tell you whether the works are being done efficiently or effectively, because they would have some details on this. My only disappointment is that it appears that the lights won't be ready for independence. That's all I will say on this one. No, I'm not happy about that at all.
See that on your face.
I'm not happy with it at all. No. Dominica Unit Trust is a long, outstanding matter. Part of the solution to this problem reside in Port of Spain, Trinidad, and I think there were issues in getting them to agree to certain things, and of course, that agreement then was not properly done. There were a lot of complications there, a lot of loopholes in this agreement, and unfortunately, some people would have lost their investments in this. But this is a long outstanding issue. As you know, we had put some systems in place to liaise with the authorities in Trinidad, because, as you know, Tutsi, as we used to call it, had a relationship with Tutsi in Trinidad. Trinidad and Tobago Unit Trust Corporation, or whatever it is. So they had that relationship between themselves, and so there was a little complication in that relationship. So that's all I will say at this point. But it was unfortunate that people would have lost some of their pension money in this and some of their little savings in this. But I don't want to say anything that would sound prejudicial to anyone. So I'm very careful with what I'm saying. But maybe privately I can express myself. So but I don't want to rehash this issue. But just to say that when we're dealing with people's money, my overall comment I'll make is that when we're dealing with people's money, there is a higher threshold of fiduciary responsibility. And we must always maintain the good governance principles. and so that people's monies are protected. And when we go into money investments of monies and so on, we have to be sensible with the kind of interest rates that we say now we can pay people. I'm just a village politician, so I'm only applying common sense to things. Anytime somebody offers you 8 and 9 and 10 and 12%, you might get, you who invest first may get, but the 100 of us who may invest later may get nothing. So we have to be careful with this. Late payments, sometimes that happens, not everybody, but groups of individuals. And of course, the cabinet has noted that, and we've asked the Minister of Finance to pay particular attention to this matter, but we take note of that. Okay, we take note of that. In respect to the police chief, there will be a further extension of the acting stint by 3 months to take effect on October 1. And of course, during that time, a decision will be made on the permanent appointments of the chief and deputy chief. But we do have a chief of police in place, and the chief and deputy chief have all of the authority to carry out their duties and mandate as the officers in charge of the overall leadership of the police force. So, and they have my full confidence to carry the duties as chief and deputy chief. Yes, Matt, please.
Yes, final 3 questions. So, when St. Lucia had a gun problem, they brought in the RSS to assist. Would you be considering that option, sir? Because there's a lot of, stories around this, the RSS is here. So I'm saying, would that be used as an option for that? The second question is, what's the latest on the tennis court? I heard some stories over the tennis court and non-completion, you're blaming the Public Works Department. And the third and last question, sir. Will there be a by-election? We have not seen Miriam Blanchard in a little while. Is there a by-election coming up?
As we have said before, that the security of the state and the security of the citizen resident of Dominica is our priority. If the country is unsafe, then everything else will fail. And we do not want to have a situation where in Dominica we cannot drive freely or go to the beach or go to the river or afraid to walk the streets. We have to ensure that it doesn't happen in Dominica. And that the respect for life is paramount. And that the condemnation of violence and the presence of illegal firearms in our country does not become commonplace. And as you know, we announced a set of measures to either eliminate or curb the presence of illegal firearms in the country. And I made it clear openly, and I meet a lot of people on the streets, and I say to them that marijuana is illegal under law. But this is not a priority fight for the state. The priority fight for the country now is firearms, illegal firearms. And so we will not sit idle by and not seek to try all of the opportunities that are available to the state and the police to bring a sense of calm and normalcy to our country. While we recognize that the incidents we've had are targeted, but every life is important, and no one has the authority to take anybody's life under any circumstance. And so we have to be mindful of that. And so the regional security system was established to support each other in maintaining and enhancing the security of the region, but also the security of each member state. And so on advice of the Chief of Police, the Minister of National Security, which is required, and the agreement has invited the RSS to join the police in our efforts towards eradicating the presence of illegal firearms in the country. And so the police can give you more information on this. But yes, the RSS is non-legal, and the RSS is here to support the police in eradicating the presence of illegal firearms. If anybody who has it, we'll take it from you. We have to do something about this. And one may say that it is just a few murders, but every country started with one, and it got to 15, and it got to 25, and it got to 67, and it got to 100, and it got to 600, and so we only a population of 70,000 people. But at the end of the day, for us as a country to curtail the gun-related incident will require the cooperation and the involvement of everyone in the country. So this idea of what's Skerrit doing or what the parable Ports of saying and so forth, everybody in Ports of knows who has guns and who's selling drugs. So what are we doing too? So yes, the parable will say something, and the parable has to say something because the parable is part of the solution. But we have to start looking at ourselves and say, what can I do? So we have to stop looking at what somebody else should be doing and what can I do to solve the problem. And I think that's when we start looking at ourselves, what can I do, then we'll start owning the challenge, and we'll start finding that we have a contribution to make towards this and so on. Okay, the tennis court has been paved. But I hope you can play tennis. I invite you to play.
Are you not satisfied with the service?
No, well, that was redone. So I was not satisfied with what Public Works did at all. Public Works should have refunded the money. Public Works Corporation, they should have refunded the money. And I stand my way start making people refund money to the government when they don't do their job properly. So I'm not hiding that. No, they may use the money already and so on, so maybe they don't have the money to refund, but they should have refunded the money under normal circumstances. But I go past that one, you know what I'm saying? I see what I have to say and I move on. You know what I'm saying? But you're raising the thing of Public Works again, my brother. But anyway, it has been resurfaced completely. As you know, there were 2 courts originally, so you'll have 2 courts there. It will be marked soon. The lights have been ordered. They will take some time to get there because the lights have been there are not for that purpose, but you'll have lights specifically for hard courts and tennis courts in particular, and so people can go in there and to recreate, exercise. Tennis is actually one of the better sports to play, especially when you pass a certain age and you try to avoid contact sports. So I would invite everybody to look at playing tennis and to run around and so on. So that's good news for not only because this is not only for the city of Roseau, but for the entire country. As you know, this was the premier facility for tennis in Dominica, and the idea is to bring this back and also add additional things to it, you know, where the tourists can come and get tourists off the boats and they can go and play tennis there, and they can pay to use it, and they'll buy food and they'll buy coffee, and they'll have people selling the crafts and turn it into a nice little cultural center where you can have performances for the tourists, and you know, so you can really do there. And I'm hoping that Ministry of Tourism, Ministry of Culture can join forces with the Parliament for Roseau and to make it a national center rather than just a Roseau Central Parliament endeavor, and to get it to be a national, because there are huge opportunities there, and spread the tourists who come into the country and create this ambience where you can have a display of carnival, for example, you know, bring the Kalanagos and bring the various cultural groups and so on. So there are huge opportunities there based on the plans that the Parliament for Roseau has shared with me, and I think that we should treat it as a national project rather than a constituency project. And so the court will be painted, I believe, very soon. This week they're going to be painting the court, and then place the nets and ready to go. Yeah, it'll be fenced off from the rest of the property so that you don't have to run for the balls every time you get off from you. So and my hope is that people can make use of it. We've tried to do this at the forecourt of the stadium, because we have basketball there, we have tennis court at the stadium, we have netball at the stadium, we have volleyball at the stadium, but all people want to do there is to have FET jam sessions there. You see what I'm saying? So when people saying about what we're doing for sports, we spend a significant amount of money to develop all of these courts with lights and everything. But 10 out of 11 times you have an activity, it's a stage that's on it. You understand? It's a stage that's on it. So we have to we have to be true to ourselves as to what this government has done and continues to do to create avenues and opportunities for us. And then so, but when you drive by any given time, this place should be loaded with people, and you can play all of the sports at the same time. You've never seen your sportsman color from grammar school days. You've never seen that where you have all of those sports that can be played in one. You know, back in the days in Windsor Park, you look at basketball there and look at things there, but all of those things in one location there, at one time. And so this is something we're looking at them. Okay?
Yes.
Okay.
So is the last question?
Yeah.
The last 2 on 2. Yeah, Prime Minister, can you explain why Dominica has not been able to restore visa-free access to the UK over the last 3 years or so? And we have been informed that Marshal Alexander has been appointed the senior Met officer. He has been around for some time. He's acted in the position for a long time. We know Itoma James was the one acting when he went out to study, but news came over the weekend that he, in fact, Marshal Alexander, in fact, has been appointed the senior Met officer. What do you think it means for the office, and can you explain the processes involved? I think you said it's the last two? Well, yes, and Kalai wants to ask about the RSS. How long will it be here?
I mean, it's not us to restore the visa thing, it's for the UK to restore it. We continue to engage them. I'm hoping that by our conclusion on this regional agreement and the legislation that we will bring to the Parliament, that the United Kingdom will take those things into consideration and restore the visa-free regime for Dominica. So we continue to engage, and of course, as you know, we have a new High Commissioner in London. I have made it clear to her that this is priority number 1 for us, and that she needs to put this as number 1, number 2 on her agenda, and she has started that process. And so we'll continue to engage with the hope that the visa-free regime will be restored for Dominica, and we think that there's sufficient positive arguments to be made and to be considered by the United Kingdom government for the reinstatement. So we look forward to that. I mean, the issue of the Constitution only gives the Prime Minister authority to give no objection to certain positions. So I don't really get involved in those kinds of positions. But just to say that the appointment of public officers rests with the Public Service Commission, and the Public Service Commission is a creature of the Constitution, and it acts independent of any advice given to it or any consideration given to it. It acts on its own deliberate judgment. Sometimes they get it right, sometimes they get it wrong. But that's not for me to determine which ones are wrong, which ones are right. But in their own deliberate judgment, they make decisions, and I think that's what happened in that case. But the functioning of the unit continues, and that's what it is. I don't think that is news in itself. You know, this is a mundane issue. Happens from time to time, and you have to respect the decision of the Public Service Commission. If any public officer feels aggrieved that there's a legitimate expectation on his or her part, then one can go to the court. But insofar as long as one doesn't challenge a matter in court and the court reverses the decision of the Public Service Commission is final. The only decision of the Public Service Commission which are not final are those where the Constitution says that the Prime Minister has to give no objection before the President issue the instrument to that person. And I to act independent of the Commission, because the Commission cannot tie me, neither can I tie it. So sometimes the disagreements between me and the Commission in respect of who should uphold that particular position, because we both act independent of each other. You understand? And this is what happened since 1978 when the Constitution was given to us. I didn't sleep anything in the Constitution, but I'm so happy to be here. Just, I think one final point I want to make. So far for the year 2025, we have confirmed 125 teachers permanently. And there are still several requests before the Public Service Commission for consideration. I think where the public officers and the Public Service Commission need to pay attention to is the time it takes for a letter to get to the employee. It takes too long because someone came to me and inquired about the appointment, and when I checked, a decision had been taken for that person's appointment in April, and we're in September, and I think that's a long time. At least a word should be sent out to the person that you have been approved and you get the letter. So we need to improve our communication there, because April to September is a long time in a small department, and so we need to work on that. So far 125 have received the letters, and there are more to come. The idea is to, and that's just for the teachers, the police as well. Several appointments were made, and the rest of the public service, several appointments are made. But it sometimes it can be voluminous work, and sometimes the commission meets, I believe, once a month. Sometimes they do things round robin, but I don't think once a month is sufficient. And I think the commission may need to look at its mode of operation and see whether twice a month might not be better. So every fortnight you meet, and you can push things much faster moving forward and so on. But I want to see both the police and public officers that this is something that the government is very concerned about, that people being in an acting position for too long, a temporary position for too long. The idea of giving somebody 6 months, 6 months, 6 months, 6 months for 8 years or 5 years is not fair. And it almost borders on an injustice where that position is vacant. Sometimes you have a challenge where people are on study leave or people are seconded. So this is why the cabinet has taken deliberated on this matter and taken a very clear position on the secondment issue, that there must be a limit. So sometimes you cut someone's secondment and the person believes that you have an issue with them. But you cannot appoint the people below who are acting if that person continues to be seconded in a senior position. So the secondment affects the permanent appointment of many people. Send people on special assignment and extended study leave. Sometimes people get their green card and they want to see whether the grass is greener overseas, so they take a whole year or two on special leave. So there has to be, you don't mind facilitating somebody. You understand? It's a small society, just want to make a contribution, and, give person 6 months, go and see what happening and so on. But it can't be so extended. You have to decide where you are. You can't be in the public service and still outside. And then people who stay there are being affected because they can't get a point because you hold on the position. And so these are some of the issues that the public service has in advancing the recommendations for people appointment. And this is the complication that you will have at the Public Service Commission level when you have those circumstances that you can do nothing about. And so with the new legislation that's coming on stream, all of those things are taken into consideration so that it is clear for everybody how you're operating and more transparent in how you're operating and what you can, as a public officer, be expected in terms of special considerations in those circumstances. So there are some complications here. And of course you have the issue of people not doing the assessment, evaluation, which is a requirement for the Public Service Commission to give consideration. So you have supervisors who don't write people's EAR, do you call it? ED? EAD, I can never say that thing properly. And then that person retires, that person goes on leave, and in some cases that person vexed with your subordinates, and so they don't want to touch that person. There's a lot of big issues, Kala, you have to deal with, a lot of village issues, you have to deal with on this issue. But thank you so much, everybody, for being there. I wish everybody well, and let's continue to work together. Thank you very much.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you, all of you who turned in. We had a full house today, and I was told the viewership online was quite high this morning. So thank you, everyone.
Next time, I will order the room, and we're going to have to get the ministers to stop. So next press conference, there are 3 ministers who will be at your disposal, okay? So they'll do some short presentations and they'll answer questions and so on. So I'm going to step back. And then the ministers stand forward. And you guys will ask me some questions. Sure.
Thank you. Good morning.
Thank you.